Hello everyone. In this video, I want to reply to Farad and his rebuttal to David Wood and Al-Fadi regarding Muhammad and miracles. David and Al-Fadi were showing from the Quran that Muhammad did no miracles, and Farad makes a number of points to refute them and show that the Quran does in fact say Muhammad did miracles. Firstly, I want to thank Farad for taking the time to make the reply. But secondly, I want to thank him for raising some very important issues about how we interpret the Quran correctly. I disagree with his conclusions, but the points he raises are really important. And so in this video, I'm going to respond to what he says about the Quran, the Hadith, and one point that he says about the Bible. So let's begin. David Wood quoted Surah 6, verse 37. Here's the verse. They say, why has no sign from his Lord been sent down to him? Say, God is able to send down a sign, but most of them do not know. We can see in this verse that people are saying Muhammad has not given a sign. In response, the verse says that God is able to give a sign, something that we would all agree with. And David's point is simply that the verse affirms that Muhammad gave no sign. Now, before we look at Farad's reply, we need to read the other verses in the Quran that say a similar thing so that we can get the whole picture. And so here are the verses in chronological order. I will not read all of them, but I will show them all, and you can stop the video to read all of them yourself if you wish. They say, if only he would bring us a miracle from his Lord. Has there not come unto them the proof of what is in the former scriptures? Why are not signs sent to him like those which were sent to Moses? And nothing has prevented us from sending signs except that the former peoples denied them. These 13 verses are all discussing Muhammad not giving a sign. In response to this, Farad says the following.
David, you must be new to this whole Islam thing. You see, the Quran wasn't revealed in a single day. Now, if you're going to claim that the verses that you're quoting were revealed after the splitting of the moon and after other miracles, then you're going to need to substantiate that claim. If a verse is implying that there were no miracles that have been revealed, then that probably means that there weren't any miracles that were revealed yet. In all the examples that David quotes, he brings Meccan chapters. Of course, these are early on in the prophethood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Now, I fully agree with Farad here. Muhammad did not give the Quran in one day, but gradually over a 23-year period. And so, as Farad says, an early verse could describe a situation in Muhammad's life which no longer applies. And this is Farad's argument, that the verse quoted by David and the others like it come from a time before Muhammad did miracles, particularly the splitting of the moon. Now, is that correct? Are the verses that say Muhammad did no miracles before Surah 54 and the splitting of the moon? Let's have a look at the order of the surahs. In this table, I've listed the surahs in their chronological order. You can see that Surah 54 is number 37 chronologically, and Surah 20 is 45 chronologically, and you can see the rest of them there. All of these surahs, apart from 54, are the surahs that I quoted before that say Muhammad gave no sign. And you will notice that they all come after Surah 54 and the splitting of the moon. Now remember what Farad said. He said that the verses that say Muhammad gave no sign come before he did give a sign. Yet what we've just seen here is that these verses all come after Surah 54 and the splitting of the moon. And so there is no way that Surah 54 could be saying that Muhammad did a miracle, because all of the verses that come after it are saying that he gave no miracle. Farad then goes on to quote Surah 10, verse 20.
However, in another Meccan chapter, we find the following. And they say, why is a sign not sent down to him from his Lord? So say, the unseen is only for Allah to administer. So wait, indeed, I am with you among those who wait.
As we just saw, Surah 10 is chronologically after Surah 54. There is no way that Muhammad could have split the moon, a cosmological event, and then have Surah 10 verse 20 say he is still waiting for a miracle. Farad then moves on to describe three types of verses in the Quran about signs.
So there are three types of verses in the Quran. Verses that do not confirm that signs were shown, verses that speak of signs being shown in the future, and finally verses that do confirm that signs were given.
What Farad says here is important, but he is wrong. When the Quran describes signs, it gives three different categories. The word for sign is ayat, and there are three types of signs or ayat in the Quran. First, there are the verses of the Quran which are called signs. Surah 3 verse 19 is an example of this. Second, there are the signs of God in creation. Here are some verses. Indeed, within the heavens and earth are signs for the believers, and in the creation of yourselves, and what he disperses of moving creatures are signs for people who are certain in faith. Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of the night and the day are signs for those of understanding. We will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth. The heavens and the earth, night and day, the human body, the creatures of the earth, these are the signs of God in creation for those who have faith. Now, the third type of sign is the sign given by a prophet. And so there are these three categories of signs or ayat in the Quran. There are verses of the Quran, the signs of God in creation, and prophetic signs. Now, I hope you can see what Farad has done. He has tried to prove that Muhammad did miracles by referring to the signs of God in creation. We see this again in this clip.
And in another, we find, he will show you his signs, and you will recognize them. And in another one, he says, we will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth. In other words, the Quran is confirming that miracles will be shown.
Firstly, none of these verses mention Muhammad. And secondly, and most importantly, Farad has taken verses about the signs of God in creation and attributed them to Muhammad. It's like saying that when the sun rises, this is a miracle of Muhammad. No, it's a miracle of God. Farad is mixing up the signs. He then goes on to quote Surah 2, verse 118.
But what exactly is the type of evidence that David wants from the Quran?
And they ask, why has a sign not been sent down to him from his Lord? The appropriate response would have been, what are you talking about? He just did a miracle last week.
And well, actually, that's what we find in Surah Al-Baqarah. Those who do not know say, why does Allah not speak to us, or there come to us a sign? Thus spoke those before them like their words. Their hearts resemble each other. We have shown clearly the signs to a people who are certain in faith.
Again, this verse does not say Muhammad did miracles. It is referring to the signs of God in creation that are seen by those who know and have faith. Farad then refers to Surah 17, verse 59.
Carrying on, there's one more verse that David brings up that I do believe deserves special attention.
Surah 17, verse 59. And nothing could have hindered us that we should send signs, except that the ancients rejected them. And we gave to Thamud, the she-camel, a manifest sign, but on her account they did injustice, and we do not send signs but to make men fear. Notice this part right here. It says, nothing could have hindered us that we should send signs, except that the ancients rejected them. So why doesn't Muhammad have a miracle? Why doesn't Allah give a miracle to Muhammad?
Because others rejected him.
Others rejected them, so therefore Muhammad doesn't get one either.
Okay, now let's look at the verse again. Look at this last bit that was so conveniently ignored. Does Allah negate that He will send signs?
Again, the verse does not say Muhammad did a sign. It is just a statement about why God sends signs, in this case, to make men fear. But it is not saying that Muhammad did a sign. Farad gives another example.
Carrying on, there are multiple verses in the Qur'an that speak of signs clearly. Take, for example, Surah Al-Ahzab that speaks of a wind that saved the Muslims from being absolutely annihilated by multiple Arab tribes that surrounded Mecca.
Again, this verse does not say Muhammad did a miracle. It is just saying that God sent a wind. There is no mention of Muhammad doing a miracle here. Farad now moves on to Surah 54 and the splitting of the moon.
Of course, perhaps the most obvious example of a miracle mentioned in the Qur'an is what we find in Surah Al-Qamar, the moon splitting.
There are 4 reasons why this verse is not referring to Muhammad doing a miracle. First, the verse does not say Muhammad did a miracle. Second, it says if they see a miracle. It is not saying they did see it, but if they did. Thirdly, it's describing the approach of the final hour in the figurative language the Qur'an regularly uses. And finally, as we saw in the table, there are 13 verses chronologically after Surah 54 which say Muhammad did no miracle. Surah 54 is not saying Muhammad split the moon. Farad now moves on to the Hadith and says the following.
Why don't we have Aisha or Umar or Abu Hurairah or Ibn Abbas claiming that miracles never happened? Instead, all the companions seem to agree that miracles did happen.
His argument here is that all of the companions seem to agree that Muhammad did miracles. But I'm not sure about that. What about Abu Hurairah? I have searched for a hadith attributed to him saying that Muhammad split the moon, and I cannot find one. There may be one, and I'm happy to be corrected, but I can't find one. But what I did find was a statement attributed to Abu Hurairah, which implies that Muhammad did no miracle. Narrated Abu Hurairah, the Prophet said, "Every prophet was given miracles because of which people believed. But what I have been given is divine inspiration, which Allah has revealed to me. So I hope that my followers will outnumber the followers of the other prophets on the day of resurrection." Now, the straightforward reading of this hadith is that the other prophets brought miracles from God, but Muhammad brought the Qur'an. And this is in fact the Qur'an's argument. I'm happy to be corrected, but I think there is a hadith attributed to a companion that implies that Muhammad did no miracles. I now have my own question about the splitting of the moon. When did it happen? I've got here the Sura of Ibn Ishaq, and I can't find the splitting of the moon in this. I've got Ibn Sa'd's Sura, and I can't find it in there. I've got the Sira of Ibn Hisham, and I can't find it in there. I've even got the history of At-Tabari, and I can't find the splitting of the moon in here either. Now, I'm happy to be corrected. I may have made a mistake here, but I cannot find the splitting of the moon as a historical event. Yes, it is in the hadiths, but we know that some hadiths were invented to explain verses of the Qur'an, and there are hadiths which give completely different reasons for the same verse. It's completely plausible that these hadiths about Muhammad splitting the moon are exegetical and not historical. The Qur'an is clear. Muhammad did no miracles, and any hadiths that suggests he did must be false. One of the rules for judging hadiths is that they must not contradict the Qur'an, and these hadiths clearly contradict the Qur'an and must be rejected. I now want to finish with a point Farad brought up at the start of his video.
I'd like to turn the tables around at you guys because you see there's this wonderful verse in the Gospel of Mark that says pretty much the exact same thing. The Pharisees came and began to question Jesus. To test him, they asked him for a sign from heaven. He sighed deeply and said, "Why does this generation ask for a sign? Truly I tell you, no sign will be given to it."
The verse about Jesus in Mark 8 is not the same as what we find in the Quran. In those verses, people are asking why Muhammad did no miracle, but there is no verse like this in the Bible. Show me one verse in the Bible where people say Jesus did no miracle. In fact, in John 9, verse 18 and Acts 4:14, it says that people could not deny that Jesus and his disciples did miracles, even when they wanted to deny it. Jesus and his disciples came with signs from God to authenticate them. Muhammad came with no such sign, and this is in fact what the Quran itself says. Anyway, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I hope that you have found it helpful.